There are places that exist quietly, unnoticed, untouched, not because people forget about them, but because they choose to. Because somewhere deep down, they feel it, that something about it is wrong. And this well was one of those places. It sat at the far edge of the property, half covered, surrounded by overgrown grass, its circular stone mouth sealed with a heavy wooden lid. Old, weathered, cracked by time, but still intact, still closed, as if someone had made sure of it. No decorations, no markings, no signs explaining what it was. Just a silent structure, waiting. For years, no one touched it. Not the previous owners, not the neighbors, not even the children who played nearby. Because in places like this, rules don't need to be written. They're understood, without words, without explanation. But every rule eventually gets broken. The new family didn't notice it at first. Why would they? The house was large, old, full of things to fix, things to clean, things to understand. The well was just another forgotten piece of the property. Or at least, that's what it looked like. Until the first night. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear. It wasn't even something you could easily describe. Just a sound. Faint, distant, like something shifting, moving, below. The father heard it first. He paused, looked around, listened. Nothing. The house was still, silent, normal. But something about that moment didn't feel normal. He ignored it, because that's what people do. When something doesn't make sense, they dismiss it. They explain it away. They convince themselves it's nothing. But what if it wasn't? Before we go deeper, if you enjoy dark mysteries and hidden secrets like this, make sure to subscribe, because what happens next only gets worse. The next morning, everything seemed fine. Sunlight filled the yard. The air felt calm, ordinary, safe. The kind of morning that makes you question the night before. Makes you think. Maybe you imagined it. But then, the child saw it. The well. Not fully open. Not completely disturbed. But different. The lid wasn't sitting the same way. It was slightly shifted. Just enough to break the pattern. Just enough to feel wrong. The child stared at it for a long moment, trying to understand what felt off. Because children notice things before they understand them. Was that always like that? The child asked. The father turned, looked toward the well, paused, because something inside him recognized it too. It had changed. But how? No one had touched it. No one had gone near it. And yet, it wasn't the same. Backhand index pointing right. If no one opened it, then what moved it? Fire. The mother didn't like it. Not the well. Not the way it looked. Not the way the air around it felt. Just leave it, she said. Quiet, firm. But curiosity is stronger than caution. The father walked closer, step by step, each step heavier than the last. Because even without knowing why, he felt it. That quiet resistance, that subtle warning. The closer he got, the colder it felt. Not dramatically, not unnaturally, but enough to notice. Enough to feel different from the rest of the yard. He stopped just a few feet away, looking down at the lid, at the cracks, at the edges, at the way it didn't sit perfectly anymore. Then, he heard it again. Soft, faint, but real. A shift. From below. He froze, because this time, it wasn't imagination. Backhand index pointing right was something actually moving under the well. Fearful face. He stepped back immediately, not running, not reacting suddenly, just pulling away, instinctively. Because some sounds don't need explanation. They need distance. The child watched silently, eyes fixed on the well, because now, it wasn't just strange. It was something else, something heavier. What's inside it? The child asked. The father didn't answer, because he didn't know. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if he wanted to. The neighbors knew about the well. Of course they did. Places like this always have a history. But when asked, they didn't explain it. Not clearly. Not directly. They just said one thing. Don't open it. No reason. No story. No details. Just a warning. And warnings like that are never random. Backhand index pointing right. Why would someone warn you, but refuse to tell you why? Skull. That night, the sound came back. Louder. Not loud enough to wake the whole house, but enough to reach the father again. Enough to confirm it wasn't imagination. He sat up slowly, listening, holding his breath. And then, it came again. A dull movement, followed by something else. A faint, almost impossible to hear tap. From below. Not from the walls. Not from the floor. From outside. From the direction of the well. Backhand index pointing right was something trying to get out. Or trying to get attention. Fire. The father didn't go outside. Not that night. Because even curiosity has limits. But the next morning, the decision had already been made. They would check it. Just to be sure. Just to understand. Just to confirm that there was nothing there. Because that's how it always starts. Not with intention. Not with danger. Just with curiosity. The three of them stood near the well again. The lid unchanged. At least, at first glance. But the closer they looked, the clearer it became. It had shifted again. More than before. The edge slightly lifted. The alignment broken. The seal no longer perfect. The father reached out slowly, hand hovering over the wood. And then he stopped. Because in that moment, everything felt different. The air, the silence, the stillness. As if something below was waiting. Waiting for this exact moment. Backhand index pointing right. What if opening it wasn't a discovery but a mistake? Skull. The mother stepped back, shaking her head. This isn't right, she said. And for the first time, her voice carried fear. Real fear. The child didn't speak. Didn't move. Didn't look away. Because instinct had already decided. Something about that well was wrong. The father lowered his hand slowly. Still not touching it. Still not opening it. But close enough to feel it. And that's when he noticed something else. The faintest vibration. Barely there. Barely noticeable. But real. Coming from the lid. From below. Backhand index pointing right. If nothing was inside, then what was causing it to move? Fire. The father stepped back again. This time further. Because now, there was no doubt left. Something was down there. The question wasn't what. The question wasn't why. The question was far more dangerous. Should they open it? Because once something is opened, it cannot be unopened. Once something is seen, it cannot be unseen. And once something hidden is brought to light, it doesn't always stay silent. The well remained still. The lid slightly shifted. The air cold around it. Waiting. Because now, it wasn't just a part of the property anymore. It was a choice. And that choice would change everything. That, if they open the well, what will be waiting for them below? Skull fire. Curiosity is rarely satisfied by distance. It doesn't fade. It grows. Quietly. Slowly. Until it becomes something else. Something stronger. Something that refuses to be ignored. And by the next morning, that curiosity had already made the decision. They weren't going to leave the well alone. Not after the sound. Not after the movement. Not after the way the lid had shifted twice. Because once something changes, you can't pretend it didn't. The three of them stood there again. In the same place. Facing the same well. But this time, it didn't feel like a forgotten structure. It felt like something watching back. The father stepped forward first. Because someone always does. Someone always becomes the one who crosses the line. He placed both hands on the wooden lid. Paused. Just for a second. Because in that moment, everything inside him knew. This wasn't just a simple action. This was a decision. Backhand index pointing right. What if this was the exact moment they should have walked away? Fire. The wood felt colder than expected. Not damp. Not wet. Just cold. Unnaturally cold. As if whatever was beneath it had been holding that cold for years. Ready? He asked quietly. The mother didn't respond. Not directly. She just nodded once. Slowly. Reluctantly. The child stepped back, but didn't look away. Because sometimes, fear doesn't make you leave. It makes you watch. The father lifted At first, nothing happened. The lid didn't move, as if it was stuck, as if it didn't want to be opened. Then, a slight shift, with scraping against stone, a low, heavy sound. And then, it moved. Slowly, reluctantly, as if something beneath it was resisting. Backhand index pointing right. Why did it feel like the well didn't want to be opened? Fearful face. The moment the lid cracked open, the air changed. A sudden rush. Cold, sharp, heavy. It pushed outward, escaping, as if it had been trapped, as if it had been waiting. The father instinctively stepped back. The mother covered her mouth. The child flinched. Because that wasn't normal. Wells don't breathe. Backhand index pointing right. If it wasn't just air, then what exactly came out of that well? Skull. The opening widened. More light entered, but the darkness inside didn't move. It stayed. Thick, dense, almost solid. The father grabbed a flashlight, turned it on, and pointed it down. The beam cut into the darkness, but it didn't go far. It just stopped, as if the light itself was being absorbed. Backhand index pointing right. Why couldn't the light reach the bottom? Fire. He leaned slightly forward, trying to see more, trying to understand. But there was no water, no reflection, no shimmer, no movement, just emptiness. That alone was wrong, because a well without water is not a well. It's something else. Backhand index pointing right. If there was no water, then what was this place really built for? Fearful face. Drop something, the child whispered. The father picked up a small stone, held it over the opening, paused again, then let it fall. They listened, waiting for the sound, waiting for impact. Seconds passed. Nothing. No splash, no echo, no sound at all. The stone had vanished into silence. Backhand index pointing right. How can something fall and make no sound? Skull. The mother shook her head slowly. This isn't right. But they were already past that point. The father grabbed a longer object, a metal rod, carefully lowered it inside. Slowly, inch by inch. And then, contact at a dull, solid hit. Not far below. Maybe a few meters down. Not deep at all. The father froze, because now, the truth was unavoidable. There was something down there. A surface, a structure, a floor. Backhand index pointing right. If there was a floor, then what existed beneath it? Fire. He pulled the rod back up, hands slightly shaking now. Because everything they had assumed was wrong. This wasn't a natural well. It was built, designed, controlled. The opening was widened further. The lid completely removed now. Set aside. There was no turning back anymore. The light was pointed down again, this time from a better angle. And slowly, details began to emerge. Stone walls, closed together, rough, but intentional. And then, something else. Lines, marks, scratches, running along the inner walls. Grouped, repeated, not random. Counted. Backhand index pointing right. Who was counting and why? Fearful face. The child stepped closer, eyes wide, focused. Because instinct understands patterns, even before logic does. That looks like, the child whispered, but didn't finish the sentence. Because the answer was already there. Someone had been inside. Not once, but for a long time. The mother stepped back immediately. No, because denial is the first reaction to truth. But the evidence didn't disappear. It stayed. Clear. Undeniable. The father didn't speak. Didn't react immediately. He just kept looking. Because now, this wasn't curiosity anymore. This was discovery, and discovery changes everything. Backhand index pointing right. If someone was inside, how did they get there? Skull. The air shifted again. Subtly. As if the opening had changed something. As if whatever was below now knew. It had been exposed. The child leaned forward slightly, tried to see deeper. And for a brief moment, something moved. Or at least, it felt like it did. A shadow. Gone instantly. Too fast to confirm. Too real to ignore. Backhand index pointing right. Did something just move? Or was it watching them? Fire. The father stepped back again, this time faster, because instinct had finally caught up. This wasn't safe. But it was too late to pretend otherwise. They had already opened it. They had already seen enough. But not enough to stop. Because now, there was only one way forward. Down. The rope was brought, a decision made, without saying it out loud. Because everyone already understood. They weren't leaving without answers. The father tied the rope securely, checked it twice, looked down into the darkness again. And for a brief moment, he hesitated. Because deep down, he knew. This wasn't just an exploration. This was a descent into something unknown, something hidden, something that had stayed buried for a reason. Backhand index pointing right. What if whatever was below was never meant to be found? Skull fire. The rope hung into the darkness, still, silent, waiting, just like the well had been for years, for decades, for whoever would be curious enough to finally open it. And now that they had, there was no going back. Because the real question wasn't what was inside the well. The real question was, backhand index pointing right, what was waiting for them at the bottom? Skull fire. There's a moment, right before you go down, when everything inside you says, stop, don't do it, turn back, because once you descend, you don't just go deeper into a place. You go deeper into something you may not understand. And yet, they didn't stop. The rope hung motionless inside the well, disappearing into darkness, as if it had no end, as if it led somewhere that didn't want to be seen. The father stood at the edge, looking down, flashlight in one hand, rope in the other. He didn't speak, because some decisions don't need words. They only need action. What if this was the last normal moment before everything changed? Fire. The mother stayed behind, not too far, but not close enough to look inside. Because sometimes, distance feels like safety, even when it isn't. The child stood still, watching, listening, because instinct had already understood something that logic hadn't. This wasn't just a well. The father tightened his grip, placed one foot on the inner stone edge, then slowly lowered himself down. The first contact. His foot didn't touch water, didn't sink, didn't slip. It hit something solid. The wall. He adjusted, carefully placing his weight against the stone, and began to descend. Slowly, one step at a time. The rope creaked softly, the sound echoing faintly, but not naturally. It didn't travel properly. It felt contained. Backhand index pointing right. Why did even sound feel trapped inside the well? Fearful face. The light from above faded quickly, faster than it should have. Within seconds, the world above became distant, blurry, almost unreal. And below, only darkness. The flashlight beam became everything. It moved slowly, revealing fragments of the walls. Stone, rough, carved, not natural, built. Backhand index pointing right. If someone built this, what were they trying to hide? Skull. The father continued downward, breathing slower now, more controlled. Because the deeper he went, the heavier the air felt. Not just cold, thick, as if it hadn't moved properly in years. Or worse, as if it didn't want to move at all. The rope swayed slightly, not because of wind, but because of something else. Something subtle. A shift. The father froze mid-descent, holding still, listening. Silence. Total. But not empty. Full. Heavy. Watching. Backhand index pointing right. What if something down there was already aware of him? Fire. He continued. Faster now, but still careful. Because hesitation had already turned into something worse. The beam of light moved again. And that's when he saw them. The marks. Closer now. Clearer. Scratches. Long. Deep. Running vertically along the walls. Grouped in patterns. 5. 5. 5. Counting. Time. Days. Or something else. Backhand index pointing right. Who was counting? And how long were they trapped here? Fearful face. The father swallowed hard, because now, there was no doubt left. Someone had been here. Not briefly. Not accidentally. For a long time. The rope reached its end. His feet touched something solid. Flat. Stable. A floor. The descent was over. But the real story was just beginning. Backhand index pointing right. If this was the bottom, then why did it feel like something was still below? Skull. He stood still for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. The beam of light moved slowly across the ground. Dust. Disturbed. Not completely settled. As if something had moved here. Recently. The father turned slowly, scanning the area. The walls were closer now. Tighter. And ahead. Something else. An opening. Not part of the well. Something separate. A passage. Leading further in. Backhand index pointing right. Why would a well have a passage at the bottom? Fire. The mother's voice came faintly from above. Do you see anything? He didn't answer immediately. Because what he was seeing didn't have a simple explanation. There's something down here, he said finally. But even those words felt incomplete. Because something wasn't enough. Not for this. The child leaned closer to the opening above, trying to see. But the darkness swallowed everything. The father stepped forward, leaving the base of the well behind, entering the passage. And instantly, everything changed. The air grew colder, sharper, more confined. The walls narrowed, forcing him to adjust his movement. Because this space was not meant for comfort. It was meant for control. Backhand index pointing right. Who builds a space like this, and for what purpose? Fearful face. The flashlight flickered slightly, just for a second. But enough. Enough to notice. Enough to feel wrong. The father tightened his grip, moved forward again. And then, he saw it. On the ground. Something small. Something out of place. He approached slowly, crouched down, and pointed the light directly at it. A shoe. Small. Worn. Old. But not ancient. Still intact. Still real. The father didn't touch it. He didn't need to. Because its presence alone was enough. Enough to confirm everything. Enough to change everything. Backhand index pointing right. If a child's shoe was here, then what happened to the child? Skull fire. The silence deepened. Because now, this wasn't just a hidden place. This was a story. A dark one. One that hadn't been told, but was about to be discovered. The father stood up slowly, light still fixed ahead. Because now, there was no turning back. Only forward. Only deeper. Only closer. To the truth. And then, from somewhere ahead, beyond the reach of the light, a sound. Soft. Faint. But real. A scrape. Followed by stillness. The father froze. Because this time, it wasn't imagination. It wasn't assumption. It was something else. Something alive. Backhand index pointing right. If something was making that sound, then was it still down here with him? Fearful face. The sound came again. Closer. Clearer. And in that moment, everything changed. Because now, there was only one truth left. He wasn't alone. The light moved forward, shaking slightly, trying to reveal what was ahead. But the darkness didn't give it easily. It held back. It resisted, as if whatever was inside didn't want to be seen. The father took one slow step forward, and then another, because now, there was no choice left. Only the truth. Waiting. Just beyond the light. Backhand index pointing right. If something was already down there, then what was it doing in the dark, waiting? The sound didn't disappear. It didn't fade. It didn't echo away like something distant. It stayed. Close. Too close. The father stood frozen in the passage, flashlight trembling slightly. Because now, this wasn't just a place anymore. This was presence. Something real. Something aware. Backhand index pointing right. If something was making that sound, then why wasn't it showing itself? Fire. The beam of light moved forward. Slowly. Carefully. cutting through the darkness, inch by inch. And then, the passage changed. It widened. Just slightly. But enough to feel different. Enough to signal something. An end. Or worse, a beginning. Backhand index pointing right. What if the passage wasn't leading out, but leading somewhere deeper? Skull. The father stepped forward, crossing into the new space. And instantly, the air shifted. Colder. Heavier, thicker. As if it had been sealed. As if it had not been disturbed. In years. Or maybe, not by anyone who survived. Backhand index pointing right. Why did it feel like this place was never meant to be entered again? Fearful face. The flashlight beam widened, spreading across the area. And what it revealed was not empty space, that it was a room. Hidden. Constructed. Deliberately sealed. The walls were smoother here. Reinforced. Not carved roughly like the passage, but shaped with purpose. As if someone had made sure this room would last. No matter what happened outside. Backhand index pointing right. Who builds a hidden room like this beneath a well? Fire. The father stepped inside slowly, turning, observing. Because every detail mattered now. Every sign, every object, every mark. And there were objects scattered across the floor. Not randomly, but not perfectly placed either. Clothes. Old. Worn. Faded by time. But still recognizable. Still human. Backhand index pointing right. If these clothes belonged to someone, where were they now? Skull. The mother's voice echoed faintly from above. Are you okay? The father didn't answer immediately. Because what he was seeing wasn't something you could explain in one sentence. I found a room, he finally said. Silence followed. Because that wasn't supposed to exist. Not here. Not under a well. The child leaned closer to the opening above. Trying to listen, trying to understand. But understanding was no longer simple. The father moved deeper into the room. And that's when he saw it. In the center. A mattress. Thin. Damaged. But unmistakable. Placed. Used. Not decoration. Not storage. A place to lie down. A place to stay. Backhand index pointing right. If someone slept here, then how long were they kept inside this place? Fearful face. He crouched slightly, shining the light over its surface. And the marks became visible. Indented patterns. Repeated. Worn into the material. As if someone had laid there, again and again, for days. Or weeks. Or longer. The father stood up quickly. Because now, this wasn't just disturbing. This was unbearable. This wasn't a hidden room. This was confinement. Isolation. A place someone couldn't leave. Or wasn't allowed to. Backhand index pointing right. Was this a hiding place? Or a prison? Skull fire. The air felt tighter now. Harder to breathe. Because once you understand a place like this, you start to feel its history. Its weight. Its silence. The child whispered from above. What do you see? The father didn't answer. Because the truth was too heavy to say out loud. The mother stepped closer to the well, listening, waiting. Because now, the silence was worse than any answer. The father turned slowly, scanning the room again. And then, he noticed something else. In the far corner, partially hidden in shadow. Something placed carefully. Not thrown. Not forgotten. Placed. As if it mattered. As if it was meant to be found. Backhand index pointing right. What kind of object is left behind in a place like this? Fire. He approached slowly, each step deliberate. Because now, every discovery carried weight. He knelt down, shined the light directly on it. A small wooden box. Old. Worn. But intact. The kind of object that holds something important. Something preserved. Something meant to survive. Backhand index pointing right. If someone left this behind, what were they trying to tell? Fearful face. The father hesitated. Because opening something like this isn't just curiosity. It's commitment. A point of no return. The room felt still. Too still. As if even the air was waiting. The father slowly reached out, placed his hand on the lid, and for a brief moment, everything stopped. Because instinct was screaming, "Don't open it." But curiosity was louder. He lifted the lid. Slowly, carefully, and inside, there were only a few things. A folded piece of cloth, a small object, and beneath them, a paper. Old, fragile, but preserved. The father picked it up, hands no longer steady. Because now, the truth was close. Too close. Backhand index pointing right. What kind of message is hidden in a place no one was supposed to find? Skull. He unfolded it slowly. The writing was uneven, shaky, written by someone who didn't have time, or strength, or hope. He began to read. And as he did, the room changed. The silence deepened. The air grew heavier. Because now, the story wasn't hidden anymore. It was speaking. If you find this. The father paused. Because those words felt wrong. Felt immediate. As if they weren't written long ago, but waiting to be read. Please don't leave. The mother looked at the well, confused. Because that wasn't a warning. That was a plea. Backhand index pointing right. Why would someone beg you not to leave? From a place like this? Fearful face. They said this would keep me safe. The father's voice slowed. Because now, the story was becoming clearer. And darker. But the door never opened again. Silence filled the room. Because now, everything made sense. The mattress, the scratches, the isolation. Someone had been locked here. Left here. Forgotten. Backhand index pointing right. Who would trap someone beneath a well and never come back? Skull fire. The father looked at the final lines. The last words. The ones that mattered most. He read them slowly. There's something else down here. The flashlight trembled. Because those words changed everything. I can hear it. The father stopped. Because now, the sound from before had meaning. It moves when I sleep. The air grew colder. It waits in the dark. The silence pressed in. If you hear it, don't. The sentence ended abruptly. Unfinished. Broken. Backhand index pointing right. Why didn't they finish the warning? What stopped them? Fearful face. The father lowered the paper slowly. Because now, there was no doubt left. They hadn't just found a hidden room. They had found something else. Something deeper. Something that had been there, even before the person who wrote that letter. And then, a sound. Behind him. From the passage. Not faint. Not distant. Clear. A slow, deliberate movement. The father turned instantly. Flashlight shaking. Because now, the story wasn't about the past anymore. It was happening now. Backhand index pointing right. If something was moving behind him, then how close was it? Skull fire. The light pointed into the darkness. But it revealed nothing. Only shadow. Only silence. Only the unknown. But the feeling, the undeniable feeling, was there. Something had heard him. Something had heard the letter. Something knew. He was there. And now, there was only one question left. Backhand index pointing right. If something was already inside that passage, then was it coming closer? The sound was no longer distant. It wasn't faint. And it wasn't something the mind could ignore. It was close. Too close. The father didn't move. Not immediately. Because when fear reaches its limit, the body doesn't react. It freezes. Not out of weakness, but because it understands something the mind doesn't. That whatever is behind you is real. Backhand index pointing right. If it was real, then why couldn't he see it? Fearful face. The flashlight trembled in his hand, the beam cutting through the passage behind him. But it revealed nothing. No shape, no movement, no figure. Just darkness. But the sound came again. A slow scrape. Followed by silence, and that silence was worse. Because silence can mean waiting. And waiting means intention. Was it hiding, or was it watching him? Skull. The father stepped back slowly, returning toward the hidden room. Not turning his back, not lowering the light. Because instinct had taken control now. Protect, retreat, survive. The letter still rested in his hand, its words repeating in his mind. There is something else down here. The meaning was no longer unclear. It wasn't a warning about the room. It was a warning about something alive. Something that had always been there. Backhand index pointing right. If it had always been there, then what exactly had they awakened? Fire. Come up now. The mother's voice echoed faintly from above. But her voice sounded distant now. Disconnected. Because the space below had its own rules. Its own silence. Its own presence. The father moved quickly now. Not running, but no longer slow. Each step controlled. Because panic creates noise. And noise attracts attention. The passage felt tighter now. Narrower. As if it had changed. As if it was closing in. Backhand index pointing right. Was the space changing? Or was something inside it moving closer? Fearful face. The flashlight flickered again. Longer this time. The darkness pressing in. And for a brief second, he saw it. Not clearly. Not fully. But enough. A shape. Low. Close to the ground. Gone instantly. Backhand index pointing right. If something was there, then why didn't it attack? Skull. The father froze. Heart racing now. Because that wasn't imagination. That wasn't shadow. That was something real. Something moving. Something choosing not to reveal itself fully. And that was worse. Because things that hide have a reason. Backhand index pointing right. What was it waiting for? Fire. The father forced himself forward again. Faster now. The opening of the well came into view. Light from above. Faint, but real. Safe. Or at least, safer than where he was. The mother's silhouette appeared above, reaching down. Hurry, she called. The child stood behind her, frozen, watching. Because some moments stay with you forever. The father grabbed the rope, hand slipping slightly. Because now, there was no control left. Only urgency. Backhand index pointing right. Would he make it out before whatever was below reached him? Skull fire. He began to climb. Fast. Too fast. The rope creaked. The walls scraped against his arms. The light above growing stronger. Closer. Almost there. And then, a sound. Directly below him. Louder than before. Closer than before. A sharp, deliberate knock against the wall. The father froze mid-climb. Because now, there was no doubt left. It wasn't random. It wasn't movement. It was communication. Backhand index pointing right. Was it trying to scare him? Or trying to reach him? Fearful face. Another knock. Closer. Faster. The rope shifted slightly. Not from his movement, but from something else. Something touching it. From below. The father climbed faster. Desperately now. Because whatever was below was no longer just watching. It was following. Backhand index pointing right. If it could follow, then could it come out too? Skull. The mother grabbed his arm, pulled him up with everything she had. The child stepped back. And in one final motion, he was out. Back on the surface. Back in the light. But the feeling didn't leave. Because some things don't stay behind. The three of them moved away from the well. Breathing heavy. Silent. Because words couldn't explain what had just happened. But the well remained open. Still. Dark. Waiting. Backhand index pointing right. If they left it open, would it come out? Fire. The father didn't hesitate this time. He grabbed the lid. Pulled it back into place. Fast. Urgent. As if he understood now. This wasn't something to explore. This was something to contain. The lid slammed shut. Silence followed. Heavy. Still. Too still. The father placed extra weight on top. Stone. Wood. Anything he could find. Because instinct had become certainty. This had to stay closed. No matter what. Backhand index pointing right. If it needed to be sealed, then what exactly were they keeping inside? Skull fire. That night, no one slept. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Every small sound felt amplified. Every shadow felt deeper. And the well stayed silent. No movement, no knocking, no sound. And that silence was the worst part. Because silence means waiting. And waiting means something is still there. Backhand index pointing right. What if it was just waiting for them to open it again? Fearful face. Morning came slowly. The light returned. Normalcy followed. But nothing felt normal anymore, because once you know something exists, you can't unknow it. The family left the property. Not officially. Not permanently. But they didn't return. Because some places are better left behind. The well remained. Closed. Unchanged. But not empty. Never empty. Backhand index pointing right. If it was never empty, then what is still down there right now? Some things are not hidden by accident. They are hidden on purpose. The well was never just a structure. It was a seal. A barrier. A warning. Not to keep people out, but to keep something in. The scratches, the mattress, the letter. They all told the same story. Someone had been placed there. Trapped. Left. But they weren't alone. Because the final truth was never about the person who was trapped. It was about what was with them. Something that didn't leave. Something that didn't disappear. Something that stayed. Waiting. Listening. Learning. Because the most terrifying part of this story is not what they found. It's what found them. The knocking was never random. It was deliberate. Intentional. As if it wasn't asking for help, but announcing itself. Letting them know. It was still there. And now, after everything, there is only one question left. If it was sealed for so many years, then why did it start knocking? The moment they opened it,